Thank you very much for everyone joining us this afternoon. I'm Rachel James from the ClickStart team at the Open University. The ClickStart with the OU programme is part of a nationwide ClickStart training initiative developed by the Institute of Coding and delivered by and funded by Nominet, excuse me. I know many of you have already enrolled in the courses, so I hope you're enjoying what you're studying. And for those of you who haven't been to one of our webinars before, these are just to give you a bit of extra support to help you shape your personal career development. So during our webinars, you'll hear from career coaches, from employers, and from industry experts. And this afternoon, we are joined by Roger Martin. Now, Roger is a career coach at Stay Nimble and has been for the past 5 years. Previous to that, he used to work for the OU in the Student Services Department, and he's actually an OU graduate. He started working in careers in schools in the East End of London a couple of decades ago after completing his diploma in careers guidance in the 90s. Now, it's my pleasure to hand over to Roger.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Rachel. My name's Roger Martin, careers coach here at Stay Nimble. So I'm now going to attempt to share my screen with you. Right. Is that okay now, Rachel?
Yes, I can see that, Roger.
Right, thank you very much. So sorry about that. Stay Nimble. We're an award-winning social enterprise organisation that offers careers coaching and job search to our members. We've been going for just over 5 years now. And just a quick note that if after this presentation you feel you want some more help or support, then by all means you can take advantage of our free 30-minute discovery call where we can discuss with you how potentially we can help you with your career and job search in the future. So agenda, what we're going to be doing today? Well, a range of different things. We're going to be looking at what sort of things you should include on your CV, how to make it stand out, the importance of the personal profile on the CV, common mistakes that people that put on their CV and how to avoid them. We're going to be looking at some sample CVs and also how to craft a good cover letter, which is an interesting one because not everyone uses cover letters. And of course, not all applications for roles are by CV. Some organisations want an application form instead. So we'll be looking very briefly at that and also speculative applications as well. So a lot to get through. So what sort of things do you think you should include on the CV? So let's start off, with you doing some, making some comments. So what kinds of things do you think should go on a CV? You can put them in the chat. And then you might have to. Oh yeah, here we go. So things like work experience definitely. Current relevant information on the job you're applying for, which is an interesting one because yes, that's right, and we're going to come on to that in more detail about targeting, making sure that you are targeting your CV. So, what kinds of things? Well, okay, personal contact details, obviously, because they need to know how to get back to you. Um, you can put your career objective as part of the personal profile. Some people do, some people don't. Things like education and qualifications, most definitely. Your employment experience as well. Skills, what transferable skills do you have? We'll be coming on to that later. Interest and achievements and things like references. Some of these things you can add if you've got the space, but otherwise they're not usually essential. But we'll discuss those in a bit more detail. So those are some of the things that as really kind of essential to put on a CV. But I thought I'd also include some information about things not to put on your CV. And that's really interesting because I noticed a couple of people in the chat said they were from, I think someone said they were from Germany or elsewhere in Europe, and it is quite it's quite interesting how CVs are different depending on where you are in the world. So, for example, I know in Europe it can be quite common to put your picture on a CV. Whereas in the UK, that's really not something that we would do unless perhaps it's for a creative role, like modeling or, kind of acting or perhaps even marketing. Marketeers tend to put pictures on their CV. But generally speaking, no, that's not something that we would normally, a picture, a headshot is not something we would normally add to a CV. Things like full address can be kind of, I think, can be problematic. It may be a bit of a personal thing, but when you consider how much information you're putting on a CV, your telephone number, your email address, then when you add things like your full address and so on, that's a lot of information. And to be honest, do they really need to know your full address at that stage? Um, Marital status, another one which is a no-no. Also, things like personal information that you've got 3 kids or whatever. Um, some other things that you should, and those things are really about kind of the potential for discrimination. Adding those types of things to your CV, like your age, like your marital status, like other kind of personal information about children. So employers prefer not to see those things on your CV because it means that if they do decline your CV for whatever reason, there's not issues about potential kind of discrimination and things like that. Unexplained gaps in your CV again is something that you should really try and avoid. I know some people worry about things like if they've been off perhaps ill or there are other reasons why they may have not been in employment or education for a period of time. So illness is one. I was talking to a guy yesterday in my other role, and he was talking about the fact that he'd been in prison for the last 18 months. So but so although it can be difficult to think, how do I explain this? It's much better to put something down rather than just leave a gap. Oh, so social media links, you shouldn't really put down like Facebook or Insta unless it's perhaps maybe for marketing or something like that. Except of course LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is something that you would, your LinkedIn URL is something that you would put down. And full references. If you want to add references available on request, but to be honest, it's pretty kind of obvious that, if they were to take you on, that they would, contact you to for references. Oh, this is another interesting one. How long do you think, on average, does a recruiter look at a CV? So how long do you think you've got when your CV's in front of a recruiter? Anyone gonna give that one a go? Oh, let me just. Okay, so got 6 seconds. Someone's got 3 minutes. I wish. 3 seconds. 20 under 10. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, apparently a recruiter will look at a CV for between 6 to 8 seconds. And that is it. But things can be complicated if they're using some form of automated process, which we're going to come on to in a second. But you can see that generally speaking, you've only got a relatively small window to make your CV stand out, and that is the real kind of key thing. Kind of really pushing your USB, your unique selling point, because you don't have that long in front of an employer. But as I said before, I mentioned about how long do you actually have in front of an employer with your CV, and that is assuming that your CV is initially seen by a human being in the first place. ATS automates the collection, sorting, and ranking of job applications. It will scan your CV and cover letter, looking for specific keywords that match the job description. So ATS, applicant tracking systems, ranks candidates on order of suitability based on the CV that you have submitted. So the key to getting past ATS is tailoring your application by using the language and keywords found in the job description or advert. Um, Avoid using complex formatting like headers and footers, tables, as they may confuse some systems. So I don't know if anyone's ever heard of ATS, but a lot of employers use ATS systems, applicant tracking systems, especially if they feel they're going to get a large number of applications. So rather than get someone in the office or a whole team of people, if they're looking, if they feel they might get 100 or a couple of hundred or whatever, they will put the CVs through an ATS system first, and the ones that the ATS system does not pick up, the rest do unfortunately get discarded. So having those keywords, that match what's in the job description is really, those keywords and key phrases is really, really important if the employer is going to be using an ATS system. The issue is, of course, you don't know which employer is going to be using such a system and which one isn't. So it's always best to err on the side of caution and assume that they are using some form of system, and therefore make sure your CV is targeted. So, key to any application: knowing and demonstrating what you have to offer, uh, and connecting that to what the employer is looking for. So as it says here, tailor your application. What you include should always be driven by what the employer needs to know about you for the job that you are applying for. So in terms of sections of the CV, for a typical, and we're going to look at some examples of CVs later, but for a typical CV, you're going to start off with, apart from your kind of um, personal information, obviously your name, your mobile, your email address, just generally where you live. So if you live in Croydon, London, or you live in, I don't know, Harlow, Essex, or whatever. Um, so apart from the next main section will be the personal profile. Sometimes it's known as a career objective or personal statement, but to be honest, I don't think it really matters what it's called. It always comes at the top, and the employers generally know what kind of information that they're going to find there. So it's got to be pretty concise and focused because it's not a lot of space, 4 to 5 lines. You need to be using strong positive language, a consistent voice, really important. So not going in and out of first or third person, choosing one or the other, and then sticking with that one all the way through. As we keep mentioning, tailored to the role that you're applying for. So making sure you get those keywords in there. Um, Avoid overused words and phrases like good team player, or I'm really ambitious or whatever. It can be quite difficult actually, but if you can avoid those kind of overused words, that's great. Highlight any key skills, experience, or achievements there. Again, as long as they're relevant to what you're applying for. If they're not relevant, don't add them. Um, you can start by explaining what your current situation is in, but I don't always think that's particularly necessary. But certainly showcase your value, and you can end the statement or the profile by stating your kind of future goals. So just as an example, so this is one that my colleague created. So I'm a creative, results-driven digital social media assistant with a passion for crafting engaging content and building vibrant online communities. Recent work experience in digital marketing and a keen eye for detail. I've successfully managed social media campaigns that increase brand engagement by 40% over 6 months. You know, getting metrics into your personal profile and into as many places in the CV as possible is always a good thing. So what I mean by a metric, something like 40%, that's a metric, or increasing customer numbers by from 100 to 250, that's a metric. um I'm eager to build on my skills and develop my career in digital marketing in a dynamic team environment. So, again, this one is, oh, so this one is stating your future goals. Then that's how you can end up, that's how you can end your personal profile, as this person has here. So, personal profile, personal statement, really important. Needs to be really engaging, keywords, key phrases, concise, to the point, but getting across what you can provide that to that employer. And the use of proactive verbs like I assisted, I resolved, I processed, I maintained, I collaborated, I implemented, I trained. Those kind of proactive verbs are really key. So, really try and make sure you use those as much as possible as part of the profile. Skill section. Um, People put this in different places. Some people put the skills after the employment, some people put it before. I always like skills to go before. So that's why I've kind of shown you this example. And the skills, again, something really important. Don't just list skills in the terms of communication, teamwork, problem solving. Try and put an example of the key skills that are relevant for the job that you're applying for. So if communication is a key skill that they're looking for, then yeah, put communication, but try and put an example of where you've utilized that in a previous role. If problem solving is a key skill that they're looking for, again, put problem solving down, but again, try and put an example of where you actually utilize that key skill, where you can evidence that you have that key skill. Um, and you can understand what the key skills are for a particular role just by looking at the job description, or just by looking at the section that says what they are going to be expecting you to do as part of the job, because it will always be there. If it's not, then it's a pretty funny job ad, to be perfectly honest, but generally speaking it will be there. So that's normally the second kind of main section. Profile, and then uh, key skills. Um, some of the more common mistakes that people put on their CV, or they make with their CV: um, lack of evidence and examples. Poor spelling and grammar is a really big one. Um, False or misleading information, or irrelevant information where they've, you know especially, and that can be very dangerous with when you just send out the same CV for lots of different jobs, because that kind of approach, it can work, but more often than not, an employer is receiving a CV that is not geared to them. It's not targeted to them. It's not targeted to their vacancy. And all they see is loads of irrelevant information. Not too many pages. A CV really should be 1 to 2 sides. There are always exceptions. So for example, because the Open University are hosting this presentation, academics, for example, who work for universities, their CVs can be much, much longer because they may have to reference lots of different research things that they've done, or papers that they've had published, and so on. So there are exceptions, but for generally speaking, a CV should not be more than 2 sides. Poor formatting, so it's not easy to read and understand, or the font's all different sizes all over the place. Unrelated career objective. So again, really going back to irrelevant information. We spoke about unexplained gaps as well. Wrong contact information, obviously. Um, is a common mistake, and obviously a bad one to make. So we can look briefly at some different types of CV. Um, so let me just Okay, so yeah, some different types of CV. So I've got here chronological and skills based. We can look at a student based one as well, creative, and a tech based CV. Now, I think the one thing to say about CVs is that there is really no one kind of format. What I'm showing you are the kind of formats that I and maybe many of my colleagues might use at Stay Nimble, and other careers advisors as well. But there is no kind of one definitive format for a CV. I think regardless of what kind of style of CV you like to do, the main thing is to make sure that it hits all the right buttons as far as the reader is concerned, i.e., the employer, that they can see instantly that you have the skills and the experience for what they're looking for. But let's look at some different types. So this is a chronological or skills-based CV. Basically what we just went through earlier on. Personal profile, um, key skills, obviously very much dependent on what the job or the role is looking for. And then you got your traditional, then you got your work history, and then education and training. This one's got interest. If you have space, you can put, yeah, your hobbies and an interest. Personally, I feel that really, you know, the only ones that are ever really going to get read is if you've done something that's really kind of quite stand out. So like, if you've done, if you've, I don't know, climbed Everest, or, you did 5 marathons in a month, or, something that's quite stand out. But otherwise, like this one, completing 3 marathons, 8 half marathons, raising something like that, yes, by all means put it down. But if it is just that you enjoy reading, socializing with friends, that kind of thing, then to be perfectly honest, I really wouldn't worry too much about putting something like that on your CV. Um, Okay, so this is a student CV or an example of a student CV. See, again, you've got the profile, but then student CVs tend to be quite different in that the education normally then comes next, and then any kind of employment or work experience that the student might have had. And the reason for this obviously is because for a student, whether it be, someone at school or college sixth form, or, you know, just graduating from university, their work experience is going to be limited. So therefore, the emphasis, if you like, is really on their education first, and then whatever little kind of work experience they may have had, whether it's a part-time job, whether it's an internship, or whether it's, something they did during their gap year or whatever. And then anything else like volunteering and other activities and so on, and sports or any other clubs that they may have, or groups that they may have belonged to while they was in education. So it's quite a different style of CV to someone who's perhaps been working. A creative CV. So this is someone in marketing, and as I said before, creative CVs can be quite different. Some marketeers like to add their picture. Um, most don't. Now, this is a really interesting one. The column CV. And I say it's really interesting because it can look quite attractive. And I know a lot of people like to do a column CV like this. The only thing I would say is with a column-based CV is that some I've heard some indications from experts that um, um, the applicant tracking systems, ATS systems, can sometimes have difficulty picking up column-based CVs because they normally read across the page. Now, how much of that is true. I don't know. I suspect, like many things, it's probably true and false in that some ATS systems have no problem with column-based CVs, but others might. So if you are going to do a column-based CV like this particular example, you might want to kind of take that into consideration. You might want to, you know, perhaps decide just to do a more standard approach. Um, there's no definitive answer to it because, as I said, I suspect that some ATS systems are have no problem at all with column-based CVs, whereas others might have an issue reading across the columns. So, I leave that one up to you. But yeah, it is something that is a thing. People discuss it on LinkedIn, on some of the LinkedIn groups that I belong to, and some people are adamant that it's a problem, and other people are adamant that it's not a problem, but something to think about. So a creative CV, as I said, they can be very, very pleasing to the eye. Um, so a lot of the information goes down one side, and then the more kind of general information down the other, as this one kind of indicates. Um, so, and then the last one is the technical one that I was going to come on to. And it starts off very similar to a standard type CV. You start off with the contact information, um, and then the personal profile as normal. Now, you see, one difference with a technical based CV is that quite often the core skills, or hard skills, there's more emphasis on those because it's a tech-based application, as opposed to soft skills such as communication, teamwork, problem solving, and so on. So as you can see here, this particular example, looking at the core skills first, some of those hard skills, depending on what the job is looking for. But it's the same approach, emphasising the ones that the job ad, the job description, or the person spec is looking for. And then they've gone on to some of the more softer skills like the customer service, communication skills, and so on. But they've started off with the tech, what I would call hard skills, and then they've gone straight on to education and qualifications. You can do that, I think, for a tech-based CV. But if you came on to, but I guess it depends on your kind of work experience. So if you've already had work experience in the tech area, then you might want to start off with the work experience first and then come on to education and qualifications. But if you are starting out in the tech industry, then yeah, you might want to put the emphasis on the education, the qualifications, the different tech courses that you've done, and then come on to the work history. Especially if the work history is less relevant because it's not, directly relevant to the tech world. Similar to this example here, so the work history here is about working in McDonald's, and so on. And then achievements and interests, if as I said, if you want to add those. Okay. So yeah, so that's just kind of a very brief run through of 4 different types of CV. But as I said before, the core thing is that you are trying to grab the reader's attention, especially in the profile and the skills section, whether it's the kind of softer skills, the more kind of transferable skills, or whether it's hard skills or core skills, if it's a more tech-based CV. But some general top tips for your CV, and I think this is about the third time I'm saying it. I cannot say it enough because so many people don't get, don't kind of proofread their CV before sending it off. If you think that you might be suffering, that from the, can't not being able to see the wood for the trees, get somebody else to read it. because they'll be able to pick out something much quicker than you kind of going over it 4 or 5 times. So, spelling and grammar, use bullet points, proactive verbs, and of course, keywords, key phrases. Because it's all about making yourself stand out, and you can add to that by any awards, positions of responsibility, achievements, especially if they are directly related to what you're applying for. Include links to online to online portfolio, especially if you're say for example going for something creative or going for a tech-based role where you may have done projects as part of any kind of tech-related courses that you've done. Then put in a link to an external site or something where a potential employee can have a look at what you've done is really important. LinkedIn, although LinkedIn, be careful with LinkedIn. If you don't think your LinkedIn profile, because you've not looked at it for 3 years, if you don't think it's going to do you any favors, because it's pretty much out of date, then obviously don't put it on your CV. Only add your LinkedIn profile URL on your CV if you think it is going to support your application, not hinder it. Um, and save and send under a clear file name and as a PDF. Most employers like PDFs because if you send a Word documents can, if someone presses the wrong button, they can easily change the uh, you know the um, the formatting accidentally. Whereas with a PDF, they can't do that. So that's the reason why they like PDFs. And good preparation is essential. Basically, just making sure that you've got everything that you need on your CV, that you've got all the dates, so you don't accidentally leave anything off. So just making sure that you're prepared. Um, okay, so we're going to look at cover letters. Um, Interesting one. Just how many people do send cover letters with their CV? I mean, just a kind of a quick, if you can just quickly put in the chat to use a cover letter. Yeah, if requested, someone's put down there. Yeah. Um, okay, many have personal statements. Yeah, we're going to come on to that. Yeah, always, always. Yeah, good, good, good. Yeah, it's cover letters is really a really interesting one because I read somewhere on LinkedIn, and I don't know how people work these things out sometimes, but someone said that only 50% of cover letters get looked at by employers and 50% don't. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but okay, even if it is 50% get read and 50% don't, the problem that the applicant has is that they don't know which of their 50% their cover letter is going to be. So my kind of advice is always do a cover letter, unless they expressly say do not send a cover letter, which you do see occasionally, not very often. But otherwise, yes, always send one. And the reason why I always suggest sending a cover letter is because it just gives you so much more scope and space to enhance your CV. So structuring a cover letter. So what you're looking at is why are you writing to them? Well, yeah, I'm applying for the role that you've had advertised in, I'm applying for the role of X that you had advertised in Y. Why them? So you can go into more detail about why you feel, because of your experience, that you are a good match for the vacancy that they have. Why this job? Again, you can go into a bit more detail about the experiences that you've had. And also, sorry, going back to why them, you can also talk about why you feel you'll be a good fit for the company as well. So, not just because of your previous experiences, but why you think because of your values, because they align with the organization. Something that a lot of people forget to put on a cover letter. Why do you think you'd be a good fit for their organization? Um, So yeah, why this particular job, and kind of why you basically is a kind of an amalgamation of those of those previous ones, and then you should finish off a cover letter with basically a call to action. Look forward to, thanks for reading my CV and cover letter. Look forward to, I'm available for interview X, Y, Z. Look forward to hearing from you. So that's kind of the general kind of structure for a cover letter. Um, and that's kind of again here addressed to a named person. If you can get a named person, great. If not, I think a lot of people do, you can still use, dear sir, madam, but I think a lot of people these days use kind of to the hiring manager, which is another option that I think has become quite common. But if you can get a name, so much the better. As I said, yeah, introduce who you are, what you're applying for, what attracted you to the organisation. Um, Highlight relevant skills and experience you have, which you feel is relevant. A key thing with a cover letter, it should not duplicate what you've already got on the CV. Okay, so it should not duplicate. What it should be about is expanding. So if there's a particular element of the job that you're applying for that you would love to talk about on the CV, but you just can't get it in because you just don't have the space, the cover letter is an ideal place to put it. Yeah. So it should be an expansion, rather than a duplication of what you've already got on the CV. Use keywords. Same with the CV. You're using keywords and phrases. Quantify your achievements where possible. Use metrics where possible. Again, um, use business. Some obvious ones here, but I'll say them anyway. Use business font, not kind of text kind of language. Positive and professional. Again, of course, speller and grammar. Be concise. Yeah, really important. Some people, I've seen people's examples of cover letters which, go on to two, sometimes three sides. No one is going to read that. So it should actually be no more than, I would say, two-thirds of a size of one side. Um, but yeah, so being concise and to the point, and ends with a strong closing statement that reinforces your enthusiasm and commitment for the opportunity that you are applying for. Um, so this is just an example one here. I'm not gonna kind of go through it, but basically, yeah, just basically as we kind of discussed, what you're applying for, bit more information, expansion of your CV, um, you know, show that you've done some research on the company, show how you feel that you can be a good fit, and then call to action. I welcome the opportunity to discuss my application with you in more detail. Look forward to hearing from you. Yeah. Okay. So that's really kind of quick, I know, so my apologies for that. A really kind of quick run through of a cover letter. But as I said, certainly I would recommend doing one unless they expressly ask not to. Okay, so I said we look at application forms. So because obviously not all organisations want CVs. So I think civil service, a lot of local authorities, third sector, including charities, educational institutions. When I was working for the OU, I did an enormous amount of recruitment and we never went on CVs. We always use our own internal recruitment application form. So you'll find that many organisations, they will not be interested in your CV at all. And with application forms, you tend to, I think somebody mentioned it in the chat earlier on about the person specification. And a typical example of the way that an organisation will break that down will be essential. So the things that you must have, otherwise, yeah, forget it. There's no way your application is going to go any further. So if they, for example, demand, yes, you must have a degree in biology, to be a lecturer at our college, then yeah, if you don't have a degree in biology as an essential, then you've got no chance. And then you've got your desirables. These are the what I call the nice to haves. But if you don't have them, then your application is still going to be considered. Use the STAR approach to answer application form questions, because quite often they will say, they will ask you to talk about, to write a personal statement about, why you're applying and how you meet the person's specification. And so the aim is to then go through the person's specification. This is a typical example. Go through the person's specification and then try and give an example for each of the essentials at least, of where you can demonstrate that you have met the requirements for that particular essential requirement. And using the STAR approach can be really useful and help you structure the answer. So the STAR approach being situation, the task that you had to do, the approach that you took, and of course the result. So if there was something about, so for example, um, you had to, show an example about good communication skills with a customer or a client or someone like that. So you could use an example of where you had to perhaps deal with a difficult customer or a difficult client, what the situation was, what you had to do, i.e., perhaps calm that customer or that client down, the approach that you took, how did you actually do that, and of course what the end result was. And of course, obviously for the result you want something positive. Um, and here it is again. So situation, task, action. It's got action here. Action or approach. People use, but they're both A, so they both work. And of course, results. This is a good breakdown actually. So, because the STAR approach is something that you would use normally for interviews in interview situations or scenarios, but you can use it for this as well. And it's the action or the approach. 70% of it should be around that, where everything else, the situation, explaining the situation, explaining the task, explaining the result, should be 10%. Okay, just very quickly, speculative applications. I know that they wanted me to talk about these. Sometimes, as it says here, making a speculative application means getting in touch with an organisation to ask whether they have a suitable job or vacancy or position for you, despite the fact that they're not advertising at this particular time. And this normally involves sending a cover letter and a CV. And this does work. It's not. It doesn't work a lot, I have to say, but occasionally, what a company will do when they receive a speculative application is that they will put it on file. Because if they think, actually, look, we don't have anything now, but this looks like a really good, strong CV, we might have something in a few months. We'll put it on file. If something comes up, we'll get back in contact with this individual. So, it can be a bit of a slow burn in the sense that if it doesn't work now, it might work in 3 or 4 months' time. Um, so it's common practice to use speculative applications in creative tech, charity, media design, and environmental sectors. I actually think it's probably common to use it in just about anything. It really depends on the individual company, how they approach receiving speculative applications rather than the whole industry. Well, that's my take on it. So, when you do a speculative application, some top tips for that: identify the employer that you want to contact. A name contact again is always helpful, because otherwise it just ends up going to HR and it might just disappear into the ether. So if you can find a name, so do some research on the company, find a name, that would be really excellent. Research the employer thoroughly anyway, to make sure that you are linking your skills and interests and values with the company and what they do. Perhaps you can even use your network. LinkedIn, obviously, is a really good example of that. And as it says there, develop a strong, tailored covering letter and CV. And then once you've sent your CV and cover letter off, follow it up with any emails, perhaps after a week, and then maybe a month if you've not heard anything. Obviously, you just can't keep bombarding them forever, but do follow it up just to see, if someone comes back to you. So speculative applications, as I said, yeah, they don't always, don't expect them to work. I will say even 10% of the time, but if there is a particular company or organization that you specifically want to work for, then a speculative application can be really useful. Um, I won't go into this because I know we're running out of time and I know there's lots of questions, but the hidden jobs market, 70% of jobs get actually advertised. Um, sorry, no, 30% of jobs get advertised. 70% of people find vacancies through their own networks. So again, another reason why networks are so important. Any questions if I've not run over time too much? Sorry, Rachel.
No, that's great. Thanks ever so much, Roger. And in response to that, yes, we have loads. So I'll start with some of the ones that came in when you were talking about CVs. There's quite a few questions about kind of what's the best way. Is it best to use keywords from the job adverts or from the personal spec criteria when you're doing your CV to try and make them as scannable and attractable as possible?
Okay, so the profile. So for the profile or personal statement, whatever you want to call it, I would look for the keywords from the general kind of job description from the job ad itself. For the skills section, I think that's where you should use the keywords from the job description. From the section that says what you will actually be doing. So from the general job, kind of information, you can use some of the keywords and phrases for the for the profile. But then for the skills section, use the specific skills that are in the the bit that says, and the companies call it different things, but the bit that is outlining what you will actually be doing, then they will either say what skills you need or you can easily work out the kinds of skills that you need. So if it says you are going to be, as part of this role, you'll be liaising with clients on a regular basis, say for example, communication skills is going to be essential for something like that.
Brilliant. I've got some Q&As in our Q&A box here. It says, what do you do when you have your first job but want a new higher paying job but don't have the job history to put on your CV?
Um, okay. I mean, that can be a tricky one because that's always that kind of first stage. So someone who's looking to go for a higher paid job, but they don't necessarily have the work history. Yeah. Um, I mean, sometimes it can be useful to for things like courses that you may have done that are relevant to the kind of jump up that you want to make. Sometimes putting more emphasis on things that you may have done, courses that you may have done, training that you may have done, and emphasizing how you feel that there are elements of those that mean that that you will be able to kind of do the kind of advanced role that you're applying for. So sometimes changing the emphasis around can be a way around that problem, but that can be a tricky one. I would suggest perhaps that if you were to be looking to do something like that, that you might want to get kind of support about how to configure your CV, to make sure that you would, as I said, be able to put that emphasis on the other information other than just your work employment.
And someone has put here, do we need a CV at all if I have a very detailed LinkedIn page?
Well, I guess that's up to the employer. I mean, if the employer is, if the employer is prepared to take but your LinkedIn profile, if I've understood this correctly, if an employer is prepared to take what you've got on your LinkedIn profile, I mean, I know sometimes on LinkedIn that some people, they will put their CV on their LinkedIn profile or put a version of it. Um, my concern with that though is that would it be targeted enough for specific vacancies that you're applying for? Yeah. If you're just using your CV that you've put on your LinkedIn profile, yeah, I think if I've understood it correctly, if I've understood the person correctly, then there may be an issue about targeting. Will it have the right keywords? Will it have the right key phrases in it?
And just on that, we've had a question that is it okay to use AI to write a cover letter or a CV?
Oh, that's such a good one. Yes and no. So, yes, by all means, use AI to give you ideas, but under no circumstances allow AI to write it for you because it will look and sound awful, and an employer will pick up on it really quickly that it's been written by AI. So use AI to give you, so like say for example, you know, what lots of people do is they put the job description of a job that they want to apply for. They'll stick that in ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, and then they'll, as part of the prompt, they'll say, these are the skills that I believe that I have, or these are the jobs that I've done before. Can you kind of put these two things together in a CV, and then it will come up with a version. And then it's up to you to take that version and to customize it and take out bits and add bits and basically make sure that the end result is your voice. That you can do, and that there's no problem. And I think employers, virtually expect you to do that. What is not a good idea is to, and same for the cover letter, what is not a good idea is to then use that initial version that the whatever application you're using, and use that as your CV to send off because, yeah, as I said, it will look pretty awful, it will read pretty awful, and an employer will probably pick that up pretty quickly. And the other thing to remember is as well is that more and more employers are using their own AI to detect CVs that have been written by AI. So yeah, try not to be too clever with AI you might get stuck.
That's a great answer. And I'm very conscious of the time. I think we've got time for a couple more questions.
Yeah,
I've
sure.
got one that's here that says, what approach should I take if I can meet most but not all of the job requirements?
Um, I guess, and again, that's a very nuanced one because it depends how many. Say that there's like five really kind of key requirements, and you perhaps, you've got experience of three of them, then, it's probably still worth going for. But the main thing will be to do is, first of all, do not draw attention to the fact that you don't have experience of two of them, which I've seen some people do. I know it may seem quite honest to do that, but it's a negative. So try and avoid that. Instead, really emphasize the strengths, of the three that where you do have experience. Yeah. And if you can find any other way, so like say for example, there's a particular skill that you don't think you have a lot of in a work environment, so you think, well, actually, I can't talk about, a skill in that area, but perhaps you might have experience of that skill in a non-work environment, perhaps as part of as part of a hobby or as part of a sport that you play, or so you might have experience but in a different sphere other than just employment. Yeah, so like say for example team, kind of leadership, say for example, well, you might not have experience of leadership in an employment, but perhaps you've been captain of your local football team for the past 4 years. Yeah. So sometimes there are other ways of approaching things like that.
That's brilliant. I'm just very conscious of the time. I think we're going to have to draw it to a close, but thank you
Okay.
so much, everyone, for joining us. The questions have been fantastic, and I do apologise if we haven't got round to getting all of them answered for you. I have just put into the chat there, if you do have an answer that you desperately want, a question, sorry, that you desperately want answered, then please do email us and we'll try and get that answered for you. Thank you very much for joining us, and we can hope to see you at the next webinar. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.